Welcome to Hey Sister. This is Season 2, Episode 7, Teaching Toddlers.
Hey, sister.
Hey, sister.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Courtney Lewis.
And I'm Carly Ferguson. Welcome to our Sisterly Phone Call Inspired podcast.
Hop on our calls each week as we interview qualified guest experts and discuss the meaningful and sometimes mundane aspects of our lives.
We're so excited to connect with you, sister. Let's get talking.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hey Sister. This is Carly Ferguson, and you are joining my sister Courtney and me during our month of May when we are focusing each episode on the connections we make within motherhood. Courtney, will you recap for our sisters what we talked about last week and introduce our guest expert today?
You got it. Last week, we were joined by author and parenting expert Nicolene Peck, who founded the website teachingselfgovernment.com. Nicolene taught us about family vision and personal and family missions, and after talking with her, we just knew we needed to hear more of her work and philosophies through teaching self-government. So today and the next couple Mondays, we are going to introduce our sisterhood to the Teaching Self-Government trained mentors who are prepared to teach us more about the principles of self-government. Today, we are excited to be joined by TSG, that's Teaching Self-Government, mentor Paije Baumert. In addition to being well-versed in how to teach the principles of self-government as a mentor, she is also the co-host of the Teaching Self-Government podcast, the oldest daughter of Nicolene Peck, and she herself is a mother to an 18-month-old baby girl. We are excited to learn at her feet today as she discusses with us how teaching self-government can help mothers better connect with their little ones. Paige, welcome to Hey Sister.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, us too.
So Paige, please tell us more about yourself.
Oh, of course. Happy to do so. So, like you said, I'm the oldest daughter of Nicolene Peck, and doing this self-government stuff has always been something that's very fulfilling for me. Probably me out of all of my other siblings, I'm the most that's like, yeah, family, let's do it. I and my husband and my daughter, we currently live in Idaho. We're actually in the process of moving right now and buying our first home. So it's kind of crazy, but super exciting. And we've been married since August of 2020, so about 2.5 years. We had a lovely COVID wedding. It was delightful. And we just had lots of ups and downs, but lots of joyful and connecting moments throughout that time. I love to crochet. It makes me sound like an old lady, but I love crocheting. I think it's so fun. And I love to bake, especially after midnight, because I am such a night owl. And so I will often make sugary treats that I should not be eating after midnight.
That's amazing. I feel like those are beautiful skills to have and delicious too. So I would crave those.
I know it's kind of a problem, but it's okay.
That's so fun. Well, just to jump right into it, this season of Hey Sister, our emphasis is on connection. And I know that you're an expert. So could you talk a little bit about how using self-government helps you feel more connected in your life?
Oh, yes. This is such a broad topic. You might think it's really specific, but it's not. So when it comes to connections, I think the biggest one that I've really been focusing on, self-government really helped me and my husband get on the same page. So we grew up in obviously very different family cultures and family backgrounds. And when he first met me, he was like, wow, you're amazing, but holy cow, your family is way different than mine. I said, yeah, they are. They're way different than most people in a good way. And so it was really good to be able to use some of the different principles that we talk about in teaching self-government, such as like couples meetings, where we could meet on a weekly basis and get on the same page. And he has been so supportive of teaching self-government ever since he first met me. And he's been right on board with family vision, which was talked about last time, and a family mission statement, which are two separate things, but both very important. And he's been so awesome in helping teach our daughter, Clara, the skills and how to self-regulate and to self-govern herself. But really, it's going deeper than the surface level with people that I meet. And so it was really helpful a lot with my husband. It still is, but I use it with my siblings as well and did all growing up. But even now that we're adults, it comes in handy still. I'm like, oh, hey, I really want to disagree appropriately about that, which is one of the 4 basic skills, which I'm sure we're going to touch on here in just a little bit. But it's helped me be successful and given me opportunities to be in leadership positions to help other people be more connected to each other as well, to be kind of a mediator and leader for them.
Yeah, those are crucial skills. It's amazing how many adults don't know how to disagree with respect. And I like the term disagree appropriately. That's a term most people don't use, but just to show respect while you're disagreeing, to understand, to be able to reason with somebody and have a calm voice, face, and body when you're talking to somebody else. Those are critical skills. And so often you just see people that blow up with one another and they can't contain their energy and their emotion. So I think that's one of the beautiful things about teaching self-government, is that it isn't so much about bottling up your emotions, but really finding that calm place. And I love that you're talking about it goes deep and it can affect every relationship. So I'm super excited to dive into this more with you today.
And I love that you referenced the 4 basic skills. And I know Nicolene alluded to those 4 basic skills in last week's episode. Would you recap those and give a brief explanation?
I would be happy to. So the 4 basic skills are following instructions, accepting no for an answer and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. So those are kind of the basis of what we teach, just like the basics, right? That's why it's called the 4 basic skills. We obviously have so many more skills and principles that we teach besides that, but those are kind of the ones that we start with when people are in crisis management mode, is what I call it. And where there's like, my kids are a nightmare, I'm about to rip my hair out. Okay, start with the 4 basic skills, start teaching those, start learning those, getting them in control, and then you can focus on more of the foundational things.
Wonderful. And for our sisters, just so they don't have to hit rewind, will you say those 4 again one more time for us?
For sure. So we have following instructions, which is our first one. Accepting no answers and criticism is our second one. Accepting consequences is the third one. And disagreeing appropriately is the last one.
Wonderful. So I like that you say that it's not just accepting a no answer, but accepting criticism. Because those are 2 that are very closely connected.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think that criticism is just negative, but people don't understand it's accepting positive criticism as well. So people saying, oh, I like your hair, and not going, oh, yeah, I mean, I just threw it up in a bun today, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Even if you feel like you're a hot mess that day, right?
Right. So you would call something that like you might hear called a compliment, that's just called a positive criticism.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. Okay. I have not put that 2 and 2 together yet.
Most people haven't.
Well, especially within the teaching self-government, like some of the terminology is a little bit different than what we might usually say, like disagreeing appropriately, probably not a term you use. So positive criticism is also known as a compliment, or consequences instead of like a punishment, because punishment is different than consequence, but consequence, that there's positive and negative consequence. Whereas you might have usually have said you get a reward or a punishment. It's just a positive or negative consequence, and really focusing on those terms.
Or the synthetic or natural consequences.
Yes, exactly. I like that differentiation too. So all good topics that we could have multiple podcasts on each one of those subtopics. But I'm curious to hear, Paige, with those 4 skills, those 4 basic skills, is there one that you tend to think, man, this one really just is crucial for my relationship with my toddler? I mean, I know all of them are important, but if there was one that you wanted to talk to us about today, which one would it be?
Oh, easy peasy. So this one, I would say accepting a no answer, because we tell toddlers all the time, no, don't do that. No, we can't do that. Right. And so that's the very first one we ever started teaching Clara, was how to accept a no answer. But before we even started teaching her how to be okay with a no answer, we had to teach her how to be calm. And I actually started teaching her how to be calm when she was 3 to 4 months old.
Wow.
Because I'm like, I got to get a head start on this. And so we taught her how to take deep breaths and how to emotionally regulate that way, starting around 4 months old. And so that one was really, really important, because she wouldn't be able to accept a no answer and be okay with it if she didn't know how to be calm. Because toddlers' emotions are all over the place all the time. And I know, Carly, you said that you have toddlers, and you're like, oh my goodness, yes. But it's because that prefrontal cortex, which is the logic and analytic part of the brain, it's at the very front, and that's the last part of the brain to develop. And so we have to help them through that teaching, but that calmness has to come first. So definitely accepting a no answer is the one that we focus on most with her. And I give her so many no answers every day. And we try to couple it with lots and lots and lots of praise. But she's doing so much better, and she's learning more and more every single day.
And you said you have an 18-month-old, and I also have around that same age. And so I understand kind of the phase too, although I'm not sure we were as good about teaching calmness at 4 months. Maybe we weren't exactly like working on that.
Well, it probably didn't even cross your mind to do that. So
yeah. And as we spoke about in last week's episode with Nicolene, it's good to premeditate what we're going to do and learn these skills. And you can implement like at any time once you're learning them, of course, but it does help to have set that base of what is calm. And we can all kind of understand that, because if you can't find that, it's going to be really difficult to self-regulate when you're trying to figure out what the answer you're trying to come to is. That's really helpful. And we all accept a lot of no answers, or we have to accept a lot of no answers, even as adults. And so, yeah, teaching those kids. My son just started, the youngest, the 18-month-old, but he just started. And I don't know if this happens with you, is where you have like a developmental stage where they start doing something new. Mm-hmm. And so you're teaching things, but you're also having to combat this new surge of something else. So like my son now has started to scream.
Yeah, Clara has just started to do that within the last week or so.
Like it's a different sound. It just came out of nowhere. And I was like, I don't really like that sound.
Yeah.
What you're doing right now, not my favorite. It's kind of comical because that's really not his nature. Like he's not usually that way. And so when he did it the first time, it really took me back. This is new. And then he did it again. And I'm like, okay, whoa, this is like a recurring theme here. Now what do I do? So I don't know if you've had that experience or what you would say to that, just reiterating what you've taught or.
Okay. I love that you bring that up, because that's what we've been dealing with Clara for the last probably couple weeks or so. She realized that she can scream, and now it's fun. Okay. But something that we put in place a while ago, and when she would start to cry or start to whine, we would say, oh, we don't talk like that. And so that was my cue phrase that I use every time, and I still use it. I say it probably 100 times a day, but that's my cue phrase. And I started teaching her when I say, oh, we don't talk like that. Then I would say, oh, but you can say mama. And so I would tell her what to say instead. And so now whenever I say, oh, we don't talk like that, she goes, mama, all on her own. Mm-hmm. And so she knows that when that trigger phrase, it's a positive trigger phrase. Mm-hmm. That's her cue to, oh, we don't talk like that. So what do I say? I say mama. And that has been so helpful in so many different situations, especially when I'm driving. I can't do anything because, we're driving. So I just say, oh, we don't talk like that. And she'll go, mama. And I go, yes, Clara, or yes, baby. And then she'll try and point to whatever she wants. And then she can talk to me. But she knows that if she says mama, that I will always acknowledge her when she says it in her calm voice. And that's something that I was very deliberate about. And, I would pointedly ignore her if she started whining at me. So I'd let her whine a couple times, and then I would say, oh, we don't talk like that. And then she would say, mama. And I go, yes, Clara. And so it was just a pattern that I deliberately did to help her understand that, we don't talk like that.
I love that. And it makes a lot of sense. Like these are beautiful individuals that are growing, and we know that their spirits are unique and precious and they're growing so much, but there's also a lot to like training. I don't know. That's probably not the right word, right? You're training, you're helping them understand because they're trying to make sense of the world themselves. And so giving that cue and being consistent with that cause effect just reiterates and firms up their response and what they can go to, like a Pavlovian response almost, because they've been conditioned to that. In a positive way. My husband he does like all of the computer stuff. He's a software engineer. And so he like talks a lot about like training an algorithm and all that kind of stuff, which we're not going to talk about here.
Please, no computers.
It's kind of funny because he'll be like, well, if you put the input in, like it just kind of helps. It becomes a little nerdy where we're like, oh yes, we want to teach them what that means, that word, so that they can put that in and then see how it runs.
I mean, if we are going to dive into computer stuff a little bit, it is like a code, a certain code that you put in to get a certain response. That is exactly what it is, because then you're being deliberate and you're not allowing yourself to emotionally react to something. And I will say I'm not perfect. There are times where I've allowed myself to be selfish and I'm like, oh, okay. But it really is a selfish thing. But I have to keep telling myself, no, this is not good for me. And it's not good for her, for me to emotionally have an outburst and yell back at her or something. So it totally is like an input code to get a desired result. And especially where their minds are so young and so moldable, it's something that they're familiar with. That consistency is so key with young toddlers. And so that's why I say the same thing every time. And that's how it is as you get older too. You know, those skills, they have specific steps and specific things that you would say. And in teaching self-government, we do have scripts. And some people are like, oh, that's so robotic. But no, it creates consistency and it gives you a plan in your head so that you don't react emotionally. And instead, you deal with the situation logically and analytically, which is awesome. And I'm not to say that emotions are bad. Emotions are great, but they are not to be used to process situations.
Right. Or to manipulate your children to doing it what you want because you're having an emotional outburst. And so then your kid responds. I think that's what's interesting is as you're talking about this, it's not robotic, but it also allows you to know what you're going to say and like gives you almost a canned response of the child in the backseat is whining or crying or screaming. And that might put me into a place of, I just can't handle one more loud noise. That would be probably the place I would have been at a year or two ago. I just need everybody to stop talking. And you kind of get to that very sharp sounding voice and you just want to cut everybody off and say, nobody says another word. Mom's about to lose it. I've said that before reading self-government. I would hit the point of everybody better clean the game room right now because you don't want to see what happens to mommy. That is not a healthy thing to do to a child, but I've used that before. And I used to think, man, they really moved into action when I said that.
Emotional manipulation for the win. No.
Yeah, right. But like yeah, and I did. And I'm willing to totally admit that I did that. And I thought it was an okay thing to use occasionally. Like I wouldn't pull it out very often, but when I did, I always thought that worked. That was kind of like a little ace up my sleeve that I could pull out if I needed to. But then when I read this book and I thought, okay, I can have a different response. And it's interesting because I found myself behaving much better with my toddlers and with my older children. My oldest is 8. But even today, there was a moment where my son knocked my daughter's sliding closet door off the hinges, both sides. They were playing hide and go seek. He like hid himself in the closet. And so my daughter, in an attempt to open or close the closet, I don't know exactly how it happened because I don't want to get down to the bottom of it, but he like stuck his foot in the door and then somehow both of the doors fell off the hinges. And I went up there and I tried to get it. And it caused me to go to a place of, I can't get this right now. We have someplace to be and I want this fixed. I don't have the time. I don't have the mental energy to handle this right now. And I started getting frustrated. And my 7-year-old daughter said, Mom, you're not calm right now. And it was really funny because I've been saying that to my kids. So my phrase hasn't been, we don't talk like that. It's been, I need you to talk in a calm voice. And that's what I've been saying. And it's worked really well. It's worked especially well for my 5-year-old. She'll change her tone of voice and say, okay, Mom. And she'll talk to me in a more calm voice. My 8 and 7-year-old are old enough to like logically figure it out. But my 5-year-old, she needs that trigger phrase. So my question to her is, are you talking in a calm voice or that's not a calm voice? And so for my 7-year-old to use that against me in a way where I'm trying to get the closet. And at that point, I'd actually excused all the kids from the room. And I was like, guys, I need you all to get out of this room. I got to try and figure this out. And I didn't quite say it in as calm a tone as I just said it right here. It was a little bit more exasperated. And my daughter reminded me, you're not calm. And I said, you're right, Cozy. I have a little bit of an attitude problem. I'm going to try and check that. And it was just so nice and refreshing to have a child report that back to you. I'm like, okay, it's only been a few months, but this is starting to set in for all of us. And it's helpful because as a mom, you need those trigger phrases too, to remind you not to freak out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's actually something that I kind of wanted to share with you guys too. Something that has helped me a lot with having a toddler, especially because, you know, it's my only child right now. And even though I've done self-government my whole life, there have been some times where I'm like, oh, I'm going to lose it. Something that has been super beneficial for me is to pre-teach myself. And I don't know if my mom mentioned anything about pre-teaching.
We did not get into pre-teaching, but it is amazing.
So I'll give a little explanation about it. So pre-teaching is basically you tell someone what needs to happen before it happens. And so say for following instructions, one of those 4 basic skills, your pre-teach would be, so-and-so, I'm going to give you an instruction. And then you would give the instruction because it gives them a little window to remember all the steps to following instruction. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready. We got this. But for me, most mornings, I find myself pre-teaching myself saying, okay, I'm awake and I know that if I get Clara before she starts to cry, then she's a lot happier and a lot more willing to do things. But if I wait until she cries to get her out of her crib, then she's a lot more emotional for the morning. So I'm going to get her before she starts crying. And even though that took me 15 seconds to say, my brain thinks through it like 2 seconds tops. When I pre-teach myself about that, it's really nice. Or when I'm going on a road trip and I say, okay, she's going to be in the car with me for about an hour. This could happen. She could start saying that she wants snacks or that she wants food, or she'll just start screaming or whatever else. And when that happens, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to tell her that we don't talk like that. And I'm going to give her a no answer and help her say okay and help her take deep breaths. Okay, cool. And so when I do that, when I tell myself as I'm getting the car loaded up, then I am much more likely to follow my plan because I actually have a plan instead of just saying, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right.
Right.
I want to have a plan. I want to have my bridge with me. And I can just be like, here's the chasm. Here's my bridge. Let's go. Self pre-teach is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it's so helpful. And with my husband too. With my toddlers. First year of marriage, there was lots of self pre-teaching that happened.
I think it's kind of like a pregame. You're having to think through what the other team's going to be doing, how you might respond. That's really what it is when you've got the dynamics of kids who have needs, who you can understand that they're going to be hungry, that they're going to need diaper changes, that they're going to need this. And then also be aware that if you go to the zoo, there's going to be those ride-on toys there, and we're not doing that. How are we going to talk about that before? Or like, what's our game plan for avoiding that as a problem? Because what you'd like to do is be able to think about it ahead of time. You're pre-teaching yourself, but like, is there something to explaining to even your toddler going into the situation? As moms, we have so many things that we're like, oh, I'm not proud of that. Like, looking back, that was not the way that should have been handled. And sometimes you think with the best intentions, like, we're going to go into this little store and we're going to get a couple cute things and it's going to be so fun. And then you come in and I remember thinking, I'm like teaching my kids a new word. And I was like, guys, I was embarrassed by your behavior in there. And then it was really sad because I teach that word after the fact. I didn't tell them what was going to happen beforehand. I didn't know that there was going to be these really sparkly purses. They're all boys. So like, they don't see that. So they were like, what are those? And it became a scene. So in the car, I'm like, you guys, I was very embarrassed. And my oldest later, he's like, Mom, you embarrassed of me? And I'm like, oh my gosh, rip my heart out. You know, I'm like, no, I'm not embarrassed of you. That Mommy was being silly. Like, let's try to take 2.
Let's forget about that.
Let's try to just brush that off. Like, I love you so much. And you're reaffirming. So with these times, could you talk through that? How could we pre-teach or coach our kids through that?
For sure. When it comes to different situations like that, we do have something called a situational pre-teach. And you can start super young. It's hard to tell just how much younger children really catch on. But the more teaching you do and the more consistently you do it, even if you're like, I have no idea if they even understand half of what I'm saying. But the more consistently you do that, the more they are ready to expect it. And so even now with Clara, whenever we go places, I try to remember to say, oh, okay, so we're going to the store. And when we go to the store, we're going to get into the shopping cart. And then we're going to walk around and get the things that we need. Now, remember, if you want something, it's okay to ask, but you might get a no answer. And so we have to be able to be okay with a no answer. And usually when she hears the phrase no answer, she'll say, okay, because that's what I've taught her. Anyway, so I try to do that pre-teaching, even if I'm like, okay, well, she'll probably forget this within the next 3 seconds. But it's good for me too, because then that helps me remember, okay, I have a plan for what I'm going to do when it happens. Then, especially when I'm in public, something that I remember for me is I remember that any behaviors that happen, they're just behaviors. And I don't have to take them personally. And so when it comes to your sons, when you went to the store and you're like, I'm embarrassed of you, that's something that you're taking their behavior personally. Like, oh my gosh, how could my children do this to me in the store?
Well, and I thought I was teaching them a concept of how that would reflect,
Right?
like their behavior was not just isolated with whatever they wanted to do. But in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm teaching them a word as if that was like going to pad it somehow. But like, it did teach me because immediately I was like, I should have told them. I didn't warn them. I wasn't properly prepared in this. So I can't grade them harshly when, as a teacher, I didn't teach them the material. And I got better about it. And so now we love doing it. And it's fun because my oldest, who's turning 5, it's amazing how the development starts to just increase more rapidly, where they're able to remember things and recall things that have happened. And that helps my other kids because it has that example effect. And I love it. I'm like, yeah, like, what are we going to do when we get, we got our little chants going and then
pep rally before we go to the store.
We were doing it in the cars. We went out to dinner. We went to Jason's Deli, which is like a staple place for just
family restaurant.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so we went there and we drilled it in with them. Okay, we're going to go, we're going to sit in our chairs, we're going to do this. And it went well. And it was so great. Yay. So like for those that are like in the younger stages, and sometimes you're like, where is the end in sight? It can like come even more quickly than you expect. And like remember things and recall things even more than you would think and start putting things together. And it's really fun. Like I feel like to see that start to take shape.
Yeah. When it comes to toddlers, it's important for parents to remember that there's going to be a lot of talking involved because yes, you're teaching these skills, but toddlers don't have what I call skill permanence. So you know how babies, they don't have object permanence for a while. It's similar with toddlers when it comes to skills. So if you teach them that a skill applies in one situation, they're like, okay, cool, got it. But then when another situation comes up and that skill still applies, they don't know that it would apply. And so you're teaching the same skill over and over and over. For you, it seems like, oh my gosh, when are they ever going to understand? But for them, it's brand new situations. And like, oh, okay, we can use skills. Oh, I know this one. Oh, it applies here. Oh, okay. So that teaching is so important to help them understand that these same skills that they're learning apply in all these different situations. But you have to do the teaching for each and every situation. And so that's something that parents have to just kind of brace themselves for. That's going to be a lot of talking. And that's okay. Because eventually, once they hit 4 and 5 years old, then they catch on real quick and like, oh yeah, we can use that here. And so you just have to be okay with doing consistent teaching. You just kind of have to choose which way you're going to be exhausted, right? Would you rather be emotionally exhausted and not have a happy family because you've emotionally reacted all day? Or would you rather be exhausted because you took the time to deliberately teach skills to your children and have strong, united families? Because parenting is exhausting either way. And so you just kind of have to choose your exhaustion. If that makes sense.
Choose your hard. I mean, that's the thing. Life is hard regardless. Yeah. So choose your hard. Are you going to feel tired and ready for bed at the end of the night because you've been proactively parenting or because you've been reactively parenting? Which is it?
Oh, well said.
I love everything you're saying because I think so often a complaint that I remember feeling when I had 3 under 3 for a very short season of life was when I would feel like I haven't talked to any adults all day. All I've done is talk to kids. And my husband would get home from work and I was like a caged animal ready to just talk and like not stop talking because I needed to have adult conversations come back at me. I wanted that. But I wish now that I'd been pre-teaching more because there was a lot more reactive parenting during that phase of life. And I remember feeling embarrassed about how my kids acted in public and how I parented in public sometimes during that phase of life. So I'm loving this. It sounds to me, Paige, like you use a lot of pre-teaching time in the car. Is that correct?
I do. That's we're either at home or we're in the car going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so the car is the perfect time because they can't run away anywhere.
Exactly.
They're kind of enclosed. And so that's the time where you say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to happen. And you have a captive audience, more or less.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that pre-teaching is super key.
I love it. And I think even if you don't pre-teach, kids learn things instinctively, and younger kids might learn from an older sibling's example, or they might learn from your past behaviors. Just an example that comes to my mind with my toddler, my 2-year-old, is he has gotten very accustomed to the fact that if mommy's on the phone, he gets to have as many fruit snacks as he wants, because I would be distracted. And so he would just go get a pair of scissors and cut open a fruit snack because mom's not going to get onto him because I'm on the phone and I'm distracted. And so he would get into this habit. I would be walking around and I'd be like, why are there fruit snack bags everywhere? And it's funny because even still now, I've told him, you can't just open fruit snacks. So he'll come up to me on the phone and he'll show me the fruit snack and the scissors. And then I say yes, because I'm like, I don't have the mental energy to follow through with a no answer right now because I'm on the phone. But now I'm feeling all inspired from this conversation. I can pre-teach my children, my 2-year-old specifically, mommy is going to say no if you ask me to have a fruit snack while I'm on the phone, which I don't even feel like I'm on the phone very often, but without fail, if my kids can hear I'm on the phone, all of them want fruit snacks, but especially the 2-year-old is like fruit snack heaven. So either I need to stop buying fruit snacks or I need to pre-teach a no answer on the fruit snacks. So I just love this because I think there are so many opportunities in our day to pre-teach that we're not utilizing well, self included. And so I'm really excited about this philosophy. So I'm grateful that you shared this with us today, Paige.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and the nice thing about pre-teaching is it brings anxiety levels way down, because when young children know what's going to happen and what's expected, then they're like, okay, cool, we got this.
Yeah.
But when they're not sure how mom's going to react to something, then anxieties are through the roof and they're on edge all the time.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why pre-teaching is so important.
I love that. And I think it's good to practice. So like, I remember with my first, I wasn't around children a lot. And I recall feeling a little silly talking to my newborn.
Oh, same.
By my second, I was better. And I think it because the older one had gotten older. And so I was a little bit better at it. But thinking back, I felt silly and I didn't know how to talk to a baby because I'm like, you're not talking back to me. It's like getting used to like using the reels and stuff on Instagram. Like it's kind of a foreign thing at the beginning where you're like, okay, we're going to do this now. And you're like, I feel silly. Are they understanding me? They're not even making eye contact. Come on.
Yeah.
And it does progress and get better, but it's good to practice and having those scripts ahead of time and like knowing what's age appropriate to and knowing the words in advance just sets you up for that. At least where you feel like it's going to be a success.
Oh, of course.
Like where you feel like I've done something and it's not for naught.
Right. No, you actually bring up a very good point. That's actually something we share with parents all the time is to role play with their toddlers, especially when you're learning new skills. You can either role play in person, or if they don't quite understand playing pretend just yet, you can use stuffed animals or baby dolls, whatever you have laying around. I am the leader of the group mentor sessions for one of Teaching Self-Government's online courses. And we just had a mom on there. She's like, oh, we did a role play with stuffed animals for going to bed to help my son. And it was amazing. It worked. He stayed in bed because we practiced. And so we've actually done podcasts on our podcast about role playing with toddlers for different subjects. But role playing helps them, it gives them a reference to go back to say, oh, I've actually physically already done this. So I know I can do this. Let's go back. That's what I did. Okay, we got this. Physically acting it out and going through the verbal motions and the physical motions, it helps get that muscle memory and that mental imprinting to help them understand what to do next. And when that time really happens, because role playing, you're all in that analytical, you're all in the prefrontal cortex. You're like, okay, we're figuring this out, we're doing it. But then say it comes to bedtime and they slip back into back brain where they're being emotional. But if they have practice under their belt, it's a lot easier to come back to front brain and start self-governing. So lots of role play is great.
I love this all so much. So Paige, can you tell our sisters, you mentioned this course that you lead online. Could you tell our sisters where they can find more of you or how they can learn more about teaching self-government?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Obviously, the website, teachingselfgovernment.com. It's going to be the hub for everything. But if you want to learn more about the course, it's called the TSG Parenting Course, and it's an online course. You'd go to the store tab, and then you go to courses and coaching, and it should be one of the first ones that pops up there. And so that's a one-time payment, and you get the course for life, which means you can take it as many times as you want. It's formatted just like a college course. It's got modules, and it's all videos. And then it's got workbook pages that you can print out. It comes with 4 group mentoring sessions, and those are the group mentoring sessions that I lead, along with other mentors from Teaching Self-Government. People, they're put into different groups, and so every 2 weeks, the people will meet for one of their meetings, and the main goal of those meetings is to set goals, talk about different successes so that we have an opportunity to praise parents, because parents do not get enough praise. And Lord knows, children are not going to give us that praise. So that's something that we make sure we get parents going on. But then we also answer questions. The majority of the time spent on those group mentoring calls is answering questions. Parents really find that it's super helpful to be in a group setting, because a lot of times other people will ask questions that they didn't even realize they had. And so we've actually had a couple people say, hey, we've done our 4 group mentoring sessions, but we want to continue being in group mentoring because it's helped us so much. Is there a way that we can get more group mentoring without buying the course all over again? I'm like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
And so that's actually recently just been made available. But I love doing it. It's so awesome to see parents' light bulbs go off in their brain like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? And just to see them come back 2 weeks later and go, okay, I did my goal. And it worked out amazing. I'm like, yes, this is what it's all about. We set goals, we achieve things, make new habits, and go from there.
And we love our roles as mothers in that process.
Exactly.
You're improving. Who doesn't like to improve and learn new skills and feel successful with maybe bite-sized improvements, but maybe giant leaps too. So I love it. Do you have a call to action that you could issue today for our sisters, Paige?
Oh, yes, I have quite a few, but I think the one that I'm going to give to y'all today is choose this week not to take your toddler's behaviors personally, and do a self-pre-teach every day before you interact with any of your children. I guess I gave you 2, but they go hand in hand.
They do. They go beautifully hand in hand. Well, you mentioned having light bulbs go off for people in your mentor sessions, and I feel like I've had quite a few go off for me today, and I love this teaching that you did. It was wonderful.
Yeah. One light bulb moment for me was that skill permanence. That was really helpful to me because, we have to reiterate and knowing that ahead of time is very helpful.
Good. I'm so glad.
So good. Thank you for helping us all get into our front brains today, Paige. It has been such a pleasure having you on. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave our sisters with today?
You got this. Do all of the talking and love every minute of it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us, Paige. It has been so fun and so helpful to have you on with us. Sisters, we hope you have enjoyed and learned as much as we have today. Be sure to join us over the next couple weeks as we continue to talk with more Teaching Self-Government mentors who will help us create environments centered around calm, self-governed, and unified relationships, thereby empowering our families to be a great impact for good in the world. Talk to y'all next week, sisters. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
How lucky for Clara that she has you for a mom. It seems like you've got your head very squarely on right off the get-go. And those first 18 months with one kid, I remember feeling awkward calling my son his name. I was like, you're so little, I can't call you by your name. I'm going to just call you baby.
It's such a mental shift to be like, oh, there's a child in my life now.
I was accidentally calling her son's name. And I was like, oh my gosh, come on.
Like, that's not right. Hold on.
No, wait.
Did I ever tell you, Carly? I used to call Cruz, my oldest, our brother's name.
Oh, I've done that too.
Dallas. I'm like, you're not Dallas. What am I saying Dallas for? Like,
it's just
like 28. Like, what the heck?